Thanks for watching. We're about to record our live initial reactions for the TV show Once Upon a Time. Please subscribe to our audio podcast over at oncepodcast.com so you can receive every episode automatically. And here we go with our episode. You're listening to Once, episode 274, Changelings Initial Reactions. Welcome back to another episode of Once, the unofficial podcast for ABC's TV show Once Upon a Time. I'm Daniel J. Lewis.
I'm Erin.
And we have just watched this episode, Changelings. Now, I hope that you had a great Thanksgiving if you celebrated that in the United States, and that if you did anything with Black Friday, Cyber Monday, any of that stuff, I hope with all of our hearts and sincerity that you did not tear yourselves apart.
Every time you say that, I just laugh.
Had to get it in early this time because I'm not sure if I could fit it in anywhere else. But we have just seen this episode, so we will be a bit all over the place with our initial reactions and thoughts on this episode. And Erin, how did you feel about this episode overall?
It kind of got better toward the end. There were definitely some heartbreaking moments that were very well executed. But yeah, the consensus in the chat even was, I saw words like unsupervised, a little lost, post-holiday feeling. And I thought maybe it was just me because it was a Rumbell episode, and I'm definitely not the biggest fan of them or of any of their episodes. So, but it seems like maybe it was an overall feeling with the fandom in general.
This was very much the Squid Ink episode. Literally. it was like the star of the episode.
It definitely was. And I just keep thinking every time, like, that stuff was so hard to get in season 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, season 2B, A and B. But now it's just like it's growing on trees.
Yeah, it's all over the place, and apparently even dry squid ink works differently than fresh, wet squid ink. Okay. But nonetheless, I think that, yeah, this episode was a little bit mixed to me as well, that there were some really cool things, some really kind of things. I have to wonder how much was left on the editing floor or how much did they have to rush in certain ways. Yeah, a bit mixed, but nonetheless, some cool things. Like we finally get to see and meet the Dark Fairy. We heard about the Dark Fairy originally back in season 3, I think was the first time that we heard about the Dark Fairy. And that's when they needed the Dark Fairy's wand. They had the wand, or the Blue Fairy had hidden the wand, and they needed it. But the shadow had ripped out Blue Fairy's shadow, and it was after all of that happened, and they burned the coconut with the lime and all of that stuff. And then the shadows came back, and then Blue Fairy said, oh, you need the Dark Fairy's wand? Well, here it is. That's kind of all we knew about the Dark Fairy. But wow, she's Rumple's mother?
Yeah. That was kind of not what I was expecting at all. And then it made me think, is this why he's wanted a baby all the time? Like, has he always been trying to get a baby so that he could call her and like kind of bribe her? But then I realized that the baby thing with him has kind of gone past that. Like, he's continued to ask for people's firstborns even after this would have taken place in the timeline. So is he just trying to be like her, or he realizes the value of them? It's very confusing. It's a very confused relationship.
With the timeline, I believe this is... Yeah, this would be... Well, yeah, clearly this is before the Cinderella incident. But he needed that baby, maybe not because of anything he planned in the Enchanted Forest, but because of everything that he was doing for the curse and then wanting to have leverage over Emma in some point.
That's true. Maybe just his obsession with finding the baby to find her led him to realize how valuable that air quote good was for him to barter in.
Yeah, I was wondering what kind of potion or spell he was going to whip up with the baby because remember, you'd be surprised how many spells there are that call for newborns.
And I'm sure that we have just scratched the surface in this series.
Yeah, and speaking of scratching the surface, I think they've only scratched the surface on Dark Fairy. I mean, if that's Rumpel's mother, which, not if, that is Rumpel's mother. So that seems like a character that's going to be coming back, which is really cool because one of the highlights of our Once Upon a Time podcasting happened recently this week, and that was we were contacted by Tammy Gillis's agent. Tammy Gillis plays the Dark Fairy. And I don't know yet what future episodes she may be in. I'm going to assume she will be back. But we're going to have the opportunity to interview Tammy Gillis this upcoming week. So if you hear this episode before Tuesday, November 29th, please send us a suggestion for a question you'd like us to ask Tammy in our podcast interview. And we can try and work that in if we receive it as quickly as possible, because we are going to be interviewing her. It looks like we'll do that on Tuesday, November 29th. Tammy Gillis, who plays Dark Fairy, and she's played other things too. And great opportunity coming up. Really looking forward to that. It might be a short interview. We'll see how much time she has with it, but it'll be a lot of fun. Watch for that. I'll try and get that episode out even before our full discussion episode, so you can hear that interview and some fun conversations that will come from that too. So watch for that. That should be then episode 275 coming out next from Once Podcast. And send us your suggestions. Go to the show notes for this episode at oncepodcast.com/274 for our contact information to send us suggestions, tweet us, email us, whatever, for what kinds of questions you think would be good. Just remember, we can't ask any kind of spoiler questions and try to avoid yes/no questions like, was it fun working with Robert Carlyle? Yes. Okay, next question. So, make it more exciting, more interesting than that. And we'll have a lot of fun with this. So that's coming up. Watch for it and listen for it.
When I saw this episode, I actually wondered if that was the actress that we were going to be interviewing because I was so impressed when we got the email. There was no spoiler in it.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't spoiled by reading the email saying about the interview. And then as I was watching the episode, I was like, oh, I hope this is who we're going to interview. That's how spoiler free we are, people.
Yeah. Now, here's a little tip for any other cast members who are listening to this or agents for cast members who are listening to this. Not only was Tammy's agent very professional and not giving any kind of spoilers to say, oh, Tammy Gillis plays so-and-so in the episode. She just said, you'll have to watch to see who she plays. But what I thought was the coolest thing is her agent contacted us. Not we had to go out there fishing. So that meant her agent was doing her job really, really, really well to go out looking for podcasts for Tammy to appear on. Great job, agent. Any other cast members listening to this right now or cast member agents, I suggest you do that same thing. Contact podcasts. If you want your cast member, whoever you're representing, to be on our podcast, hey, we're just an email or a phone call away. Our contact information is on the website, oncepodcast.com. It doesn't have to be our podcast. There are other Once Upon a Time podcasts as well. But big props to Tammy Gillis's agent. I think she does a fantastic job, and it'll be a fun conversation. But moving on from that, so Morpheus now has a name, Gideon.
Yeah.
I kind of thought he was going to be named Morpheus.
I think I liked where she got the name from, Gideon, from the book that was the first book her mom read her. It makes it more sentimental. And also it'll probably make him easier to hide because I don't know if Belle knows that Rumpel kind of barters in names and the whole Emma story about how he just needed to know her name. But he did say a name's a special thing to her in the flashback. And I think it was very wise of her to choose a name that he probably has not paid any attention to her love of this book and probably would not think of when he's searching for him.
Okay. Wait. What? Sorry. Are you seeing this in the chat room?
No.
This is an edit point.
Oh.
Wait a minute.
She
Are
played the
you
baby's mother, Jill.
are you sure about that, Matthew Paul? That looked like
I was
Tammy.
like, are you hearing me? Did I say something wrong? I'm not in chat when I'm talking because it distracts me. Um, oh, yeah, she does look like the baby's mom.
I didn't even see the baby's mom.
You saw her for like 1 second. It says she plays Jill.
Oh, really? Okay, I did see, I did run across something today that said she plays Jill. I thought, oh, I wonder if Jack and Jill, and whoops, I shouldn't have looked that up. Spoiler. But they never said Jack and Jill in the chat.
Oh, yeah. Someone named Jamie Murray plays the Black Fairy. Oh,
Okay,
she looks super familiar.
this is gonna, yeah, as Jeremy says, glad it came up before the interview. John, do you happen to be here? Because I feel like that's gonna be a pain to edit. So we gotta.
That's her. That's why she looks familiar.
Hmm?
No, I'm just on IMDb. It's okay.
Why
She's in
the?
Dexter.
Oh, okay. Okay. Let me. This is why we do
Jeremy, you're in
editing.
yeah.
Move everything from when we. So we got to go back and talk about the Blue Fairy again because we just got to do that whole thing over again.
Another thing, I don't know if this is important, but in this episode, I think she was referred to as Black Fairy. And in the past, if she's been referred to as the Dark Fairy, it might be a different person.
I thought she was referred both ways.
It might be. I just wrote Black Fairy in my notes.
Okay. Ugh. That really kills my mood. I don't remember what we talked about since then. Chat room, help us out, please. Be our saviors.
What we talked about since then?
Yeah, because really what we need to do is we need to go back, redo all of that since then, since I got that wrong. That was so connected with the conversation.
You had kind of just segued into the chat about the names.
Okay. Actually, I think we can have
names.
That Black Fairy part stay in and remove everything after that. Okay. So we'll remove everything after we talked about the Dark Fairy, Black Fairy. Because I think that's when I said, by the way, the Black Fairy is played by Tammy Gillis. And then that started that whole thing, which would be a nightmare to try and pick out our content from that. So.
Oh, Squid Ink. Apparently we talked about Squid Ink and then the mother. The Shadow and the Wand. Aaron had just mentioned him saying names are special thing. Yeah, so the names, I know we definitely, that's what we had just started when we had to stop. But I don't remember if we talked about anything between the interview. Like you had just brought up Belle and what she named the baby.
Yeah. Okay. So talking about Dark Fairy. We talked about Dark Fairy. I think that'll stay in. Then I went on the interview thing, so it's not going to be Tammy Gillis. I mean, we will still interview her. Um, so from there, we've talked about Dark Fairy. Where can we go from there? Okay, let me try it with this and see if we can rectify this conversation without having to start completely over. I am so tempted to just start over from the beginning, but we'll not do that. I'm the one tearing myself apart here. Okay, so Dark Fairy / interview thing.
Weird episode.
Names.
Dark
So the
Fairy
whole names
interview.
thing,
Yeah.
we'll come back to the names thing. Don't worry. So whatever we said about names, we will mention that again.
Okay.
Let's just jump straight into this. I really think that the Dark Fairy will be someone we'll see again because being Rumple's mother, you just think you can't have a character that important appear on the show and then never appear ever again.
I agree. And I wonder if we're going to see her again in the context of wherever Blue Fairy has taken the baby, because Dark Fairies seem to be summoned from somewhere. And so I wonder if she's living in some fairy place where that could be where Blue has decided to hide out with baby Gideon.
Well, at some point, I think it was in season 3, they said that all fairies came from Neverland. Remember?
Huh.
Young child Rumple was climbing the tree looking for a fairy. And remember who else was the sole occupant originally of Wonderland was the Shadow. Dark Fairy, Shadow. Hey, maybe they're going out together. But I thought at the end of this episode, when the baby was born, Gideon, I thought what Belle was going to do is have Blue Fairy summon the Dark Fairy again and give the Dark Fairy to Rumple, because that would seem like the only person that Rumple would not go to see ever again or would not dare to venture near.
Yeah, I wondered about that too. I think I support this decision a little bit better. Except I'm just curious if it's so easy for Blue to just poof out of Storybrooke. Why hasn't she done that yet?
Well, she flew, and we don't know exactly where she went, just that it's somewhere away from Storybrooke, away from Rumple.
So are the skies kind of like the waters where they can kind of travel from world to world, just not on land?
Oh, I don't know. This is when it gets into asking a lot of questions, and
That we're not going to get any answers to.
yeah, as
Squidding.
you know,
Just
Your questions are pointless.
but the baby is not named Morpheus, named instead Gideon. What do you think of that?
I liked that. I thought it was a really endearing, like it was a very endearing sentiment that Belle used the book that her mother raised, or bleh, that Belle used the character in the book that her mother used to read to her. And it's the book that she said made her know that she could be this type of strong woman that she is. And it's probably a name that Rumple's not gonna figure out when he's looking for the baby. So I really liked that.
Yeah, and it makes sense. He does deal with names, and uh, I don't know what I wanted to say from there. So let me change it to this. What was the last thing you said?
Rumple won't be able to find him.
I think at some point, and this could be episodes from now, much later in the season, obviously. No, let me try this again. Boy, my brain is like totally off track since the whole interview mess up, because I do want to still work that in. Um, It's not like I had too much turkey, because I didn't have turkey.
You didn't have turkey on Thanksgiving?
No, our plans were different. We had steak,
Okay.
so we still ate an animal.
Acceptable.
Okay, let me just jump to this. After I copy something over.
Excuse me.
Boy, this is going to be fun for John to edit. Okay. So the last thing you said was something about finding.
That it'll, with the name Gideon, Rumpel won't be able to find him.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
have to look for that name. Yeah.
Okay. And we do know names are very powerful and are keys to Rumpel's being able to find people and have some kind of control over them. But you know who has very powerful names? People who we do know how to find because they give us names. And we know them by their names because they are our heroes. For this episode, I want to thank our heroes, Lisa Slack, Lisa R., and our 26 heroes on Patreon. Thank you so much for supporting this podcast. We couldn't do this without you. You are like the kind fairy who comes and grants our wishes, takes us to the ball, puts us in pretty dresses or pretty whatever, tuxedos or something. You are an amazing person. You even can maybe not take our baby. Oh, I don't even want to. That was. Let me try this again. You can even protect us from the forces of darkness. Yes, our heroes are that powerful. Thank you very much for supporting this podcast. If you would like to be a hero, or maybe it's been a little while since you've been a hero, or you want to up your heroship to the podcast, then please go to oncepodcast.com/hero. And thank you for your support. Before we get back into the we'll get back into the conversation because of this. Going back to the conversation about babies, that baby that Rumpel had back in the flashbacks, I knew very little about this episode until the day of. One thing I did know about this episode is that actress Tammy Gillis would be appearing in it. And the reason I know that is because her agent contacted us saying, hey, would you be interested in interviewing Tammy Gillis? Which, by the way, agents, that's a great thing to do. Contact the podcasters who podcast about the TV show your cast member is in and see if you can arrange an interview. Fantastic. So if any of the other cast for Once Upon a Time are listening, get your agents to contact us or the other Once Upon a Time podcast. Or if you are an agent representing someone in Once Upon a Time, then please definitely contact us like Tammy Gillis's agent did. And Tammy Gillis, you're probably wondering, who are we talking about? And how does this tie in with the baby? Tammy Gillis played the mother of the baby named Jill, and her husband was named Jack. So we have Jack and Jill right there in Once Upon a Time. We don't really get to hear from them, so that was a little bit of a bummer. But we will get the opportunity to interview Tammy Gillis. So if you have some questions, please get those to us as soon as possible before Tuesday afternoon, November 29th, because that's about when we'll be interviewing Tammy. We'll have a short little interview with her and try and get that interview out to you before our next upcoming full discussion episode. So a nice little bonus exclusive interview with Tammy Gillis. And we'll ask her some fun questions about what it's like to jump into this show that's had several seasons of history behind it, and maybe find out a little bit more about what might have been filmed that we didn't get to see with Jack and Jill and maybe their pail of water or anything like that. But if you have some suggestions for questions, feel free to send those to us. Our contact information is in the show notes at oncepodcast.com/274. And please try to avoid the questions that could be answered with a yes or no. Like, was it fun getting to work with Robert Carlyle? Yes. Okay, next question. Try and avoid that kind of stuff and also realize we can't ask any kind of spoiler questions. So send us your suggestions for questions. Send those suggestions as quickly as possible. And we look forward to interviewing Tammy Gillis in an upcoming little episode, a bonus episode that we'll put out on the feed for you. So watch for that. Get to enjoy that interview that we have with her. Coming back to discussing this episode, what else is there to say? Okay, yeah,
Aladdin and
I
Jasmine.
got. Now, coming back to another mother in this episode, Zelena, this seemed like a missed opportunity for Zelena and Regina to finally make things right. I mean, they had this great conversation about forgiveness, but then Regina, come on, Regina, with all of that maturing you did, and you say something like, I can't forgive you. No, there's nothing that separates someone from someone else as being forgivable or unforgivable. Forgiveness is a choice. It's not measured by anything the person did. It's really based on who is doing the forgiving. So I think Zelena is forgivable. And I thought we would get to see them repair this relationship.
I think that saving her life is definitely a big step. And even if Regina is convinced that she has not forgiven Zelena, there might be more forgiveness in her heart than she actually realizes. But Zelena has been double crossing her this entire season so far. And I think that I know that you don't necessarily earn forgiveness because when you give forgiveness to another person, it's actually kind of a selfish act because forgiveness is really or unforgiveness is just hurting you. But I don't I liked that they had that conversation, and I think that it might lead to more repairing of their relationship down the road because it's out there now. It's out in the open
Yeah.
versus Regina just holding on to all of that.
And if we were to learn that Zelena had secretly been playing double agent, I think that would have come up in this conversation. That it didn't makes me think that Zelena wasn't playing double agent, unless it's something that just Zelena decided not to mention at this point, and she'll say that in the next episode or so.
I think Zelena, like all of the I can't even think of the word. Sorry. I can't think of the word, and it's a word that we use all the time. I think Zelena, like all of the big bads in this series, kind of works for whoever is offering her the best thing at at the right time. So she's just going with what's being offered to her and what seems to benefit her at the time.
Do you think you could say that again as a whole sentence?
I don't remember the beginning. Otherwise, I would. Villain. There's the word. Okay, now I can say it in a simple
Oncepodcast.com/villain does also work, by the way.
for the heroes for
Yeah.
sponsorship. That's cool. I think Zelena, like all the villains in this show, is just going to take the best offer that comes at the most convenient time. And so it's not even necessarily personal against Regina. She's just going with who's offering her some type of bargain or protection or something that she needs at the time. She doesn't seem to have a lot of loyalty to anybody.
Yeah, and at least this time she knows that Evil Queen doesn't have loyalty to her because it did seem like Evil Queen was totally willing to kill Zelena until Regina came and started crushing their heart, the heart they share, which that was a bold move, Regina. Really cool to see that.
I really liked that. And I really liked what Regina said to the Evil Queen. You still have a hole in your heart, just like I had when I came here. And you're so desperate to fill it that you actually believe him. Like you actually can't see that Rumpelstiltskin is just playing the same games that he always has. And it made me think a lot of the line in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix when Harry said, "You're the weak one," to Voldemort because he said, "You're never going to know love or friendship. And I feel sorry for you," because that's kind of the thing that separates villains from heroes is that heroes have that and villains don't, because they won't let themselves have that, because it shows weakness
Mhm.
to them.
And speaking of weakness, Rumple definitely still has that weakness for magic and manipulation. It was nice to see that after that little speech from Belle saying, "You'll lose me forever," basically saying, "Are you really willing to do that? Is that a price you're willing to pay?" And Rumple walking away told me, no, he's not willing to lose her forever. But
And then,
yeah, then all of that happens, which was not at his doing. So that's nice to know. And apparently, if you're pregnant, don't eat anything from Granny's. Don't drink the tea. Don't eat onion rings. Nothing
but
from
it
Granny's.
soothes the soul.
Soothes the soul and speeds the pregnancy.
Yes.
We got to see a little bit more of Emma's vision. And I wonder if this is the way they're going to play this out. Like when you look at this, the way they're developing this season is really interesting to me. I feel like they've not done any other seasons this way before, because it feels like there are several threads of storylines in this season, and we're getting little bits of each one of them. And one of those little bits was seeing the sword that kills Emma, and then her finding the sword, and that whole Emma Savior Shakes thread that we get to follow. And
Yeah. Oops, sorry.
go ahead.
And I wonder if that thread is going to be kind of the entire season arc, versus they've kind of been doing it so that things like that are wrapped up within the half of the season. And then we have the long hiatus, and then we have a new story arc. And it kind of seems like they might be pulling this one for the long run. It might be a full season arc versus it's going to wrap up in the next 2 weeks.
See, I actually feel the other way. I feel like since we have only one more episode before the winter hiatus, so keep that in mind. The episode that airs on Sunday, December 4th is the last one for this season and for this year. It'll be back in probably March 2017 with the rest of the season. But I feel like now that they have the sword, that it could be the next episode that we get to see this play out in some way, or maybe in some significant cliffhanger connected with this specific thing.
So do you think that they're also going to wrap up the evil queen and Regina being separate, and Rumple finding Gideon in the next episode? Because it just seems like that's a lot, and this is the one we have the least information about.
Right. Yeah, that's true. So they do have other things that they could wrap up more nicely, as well as Aladdin and Jasmine. That could be, well, okay. I don't know what they could wrap up in the one episode left before the winter hiatus. They may not even wrap anything up. They don't have to. They will leave us with a cliffhanger, most likely. They always want to do that because they want to leave us with something that will make us want to come back, and that leaves us just hungry to know what happens. And they always do that. So there will be something like that. What that is, really, I guess any one of these things could be it. Any one of these things could be wrapped up or not wrapped up.
I hope that they don't just send. So now Aladdin's a genie, and they made a big, huge deal out of that. But she's the one in control of him. So all she has to do is use 2 wishes to fight their battle, and then wish him free. Which I know it doesn't always work that way, because the wishes always come with a consequence. But I hope they don't just say, "Okay, well, we're going back to Agrabah now. Bye," and just kind of get sent to Forgotten Character Island, because they've done that exact same thing with, even in my opinion, bigger story arcs.
Mm-hmm.
And so my hope is that they didn't just bring them in for nothing, basically.
Yeah. And we do have that Aladdin becoming the genie part too, which that was cool. It's funny to hear that clunk of the bracelets coming out of the bottle instead of a genie. But so now Aladdin is a genie, and it wasn't Jafar coming out of the. Let me say that differently. I just want to say that differently. So it wasn't Jafar that was the genie in there. I think that would have been great. I was expecting that. I was thinking, okay, here comes the next villain, that this is the cliffhanger, and this is going to lead us into the cliffhanger. It's a pair of bracelets.
Stylish bracelets.
But as both a former savior, he's not the savior anymore, but a former savior and a genie, I wonder what Aladdin can do with that kind of power.
Well, technically, he is just serving his master, correct?
Yeah, true.
I wonder if he's going to have some information about the sword, or if they're even going to think to ask him. Because it seems like he would be a good person to ask about that sword. The sword that looks eerily similar to Excalibur, but is not Excalibur.
What I'm thinking does not happen, but I kind of feel like by my saying, oh, this couldn't happen, means this is probably going to be what happens, is that Aladdin is somehow the one that Emma is battling because of some wish that Jasmine makes, or someone who has control of the lamp makes some kind of wish that goes in the wrong direction, backfires in some way, or maybe they wish Emma dead, and that's what happens. I really don't want to see that's the direction they go, but I'll just put that out there, that could be a horrible direction they go.
To kind of like build on that, I had mentioned a couple weeks ago that I wondered if Emma was battling her price of magic. And I still kind of think that might be the idea, especially now that she has the sword that is going to be used to stab her, or in theory will be used to stab her, because you would think that somebody's price of magic would manifest of them. But something just that I thought of while you were saying that is that genies are kind of bound to the laws of magic. As we learned more about that in Once Upon a Time in Wonderland, where the genies were created because they took this water, and it's way more complicated and it's a whole season, but they're bound by the laws of magic. And so even if it is Aladdin that is fighting Emma, it could still be her price of magic, and it could be that he's having to rectify all of this magic that she's used without paying any price.
Or it could be Emma, or it could be Emma battling Emma, because now she has the sword that stabs someone that looks like Emma.
Yeah. But if it's Emma, like, do you think maybe she gets separated from herself?
It could be something like that. Maybe this is what happens when the shears of destiny are used, and maybe they'll get used on Emma, and it splits her savior self from her non-savior self, and one of the two kills the other one, and that's the process of not becoming the savior. Because remember, Hyde did say something like, this is what happens to saviors. So it seems
Yeah.
like he's a little bit familiar with what is in the vision, which seems like this is just the savior thing that happens. They have this kind of vision of being killed by some dark figure, and who knows? Or maybe it's the dark fairy. Rumpel's mom comes and says, "You really messed up my son's family, and I'm gonna kill you."
Emma, it's been a recurring theme, much like Regina has always been battling Evil Queen throughout the series, and Rumpel has always been battling the darkness throughout the series. Emma has always had that kind of duality in her as well, and they've used it several times as a main story arc, which was in season 1. It was like Emma from our world kind of battling this Emma that wants to believe in this fairy tale world, and um coming to terms with that. And then they used it when Emma was battling the air quote greatest potential for darkness that was in her. And then again last season when she was battling the dark one that was her. So that I like that idea that it's Emma battling Emma in some way.
Yeah. We'll see. And I think that we will at least get a little bit more of the vision in the next episode since she has the sword, but we'll see. So we want to hear from you. These are and were just our initial reactions. Please send us your thoughts and theories on this episode and what is upcoming. Our contact information is in the show notes for this episode at oncepodcast.com/274. That's also where you can go to share this episode out with others. If you enjoy the podcast, sharing it with others and getting others to listen is one of the best ways, is really the best way that you can support the podcast. So please go to oncepodcast.com slash. So please go to, I'm looking for your hashtag while I'm saying
Oh,
this.
sorry.
Did you add it? Hashtag closing?
I hashtagged closing, yeah.
Okay. So please go to oncepodcast.com/274 to share this episode out and follow us on Twitter at oncepodcast and each of us individually. I'm Daniel J. Lewis on Twitter at the Daniel J. Lewis.
I'm Erin on Twitter at Erin J. Cruz.
We'll be back for our upcoming full discussion and keep an ear out for our interview with Tammy Gillis. That'll be fun. Send us your questions and suggestions over there. And until next time, remember, I play a very long game and you are nothing more than one of my pawns. But thanks for listening. Once Podcast is a proud member of Noodle.mx Network. Find more of our award-winning and award-nominated podcasts to make you think, laugh, and succeed at Noodle.mx. Big thanks to our heroes for supporting this episode of the podcast. If you would like to be a hero to the podcast too, then please go to oncepodcast.com/hero. And thank you for your support. Did you see the closing that I had listed?
No, I didn't. I just wanted to mention that line and then what did you have? Oh, I should just click the hashtag, right?
Yeah. I kind of feel like I want to do mine instead.
I don't see it. Hang on. Oh, that's good too. Either way, you perfectly timed the closing that you did.
Close to. I close to perfectly timed it.
Oh, okay. It felt perfect to me.
Oh, thank you. No, there's enough editing on this episode. I'll just leave it at that. Okay, go ahead and stop your recording.
I feel as the girl on the podcast that I've let people down by not mentioning what the heck is Emma wearing. This episode and the fact that Belle's dress matched the color of the strand that she was following.
Well, talking about what people were wearing, and I'll probably bring this up in the full discussion. Regina looked a lot more modern Evil Queen, or not Regina, but Evil Queen looked a lot more modern Evil Queen in this episode than previous episodes. What she was wearing when she went to talk to Zelena.
Oh, with her, didn't she have like a super long straight ponytail? Is that?
No, her hair was up, and she had this gigantic belt buckle on that had like an eagle, I think, or no, probably not an eagle. That it was probably a crow, raven. Oh, I always forget what is it that Regina uses. Crow. Maybe it was a crow. But we'll
Jeremy
talk.
said even he noticed. Yeah, the floral, like Emma was wearing this like floral embroidery flossed stitched black sweater. Sorry. Someone did ask a question for Tammy in.
Yeah, I saw that.
Okay.
That's one of those spoiler kinds of questions. We can't ask
Yeah.
a question about future events. So that I didn't say that I said that during the unsupervised part of the podcast. But so basically, especially since Tammy was not the dark fairy, like I thought, but she was a character that appeared just for a moment, I think the dynamic of the questions will be significantly different. And it will be
Yes.
a shorter interview. But in a way, that also makes it easier because I was thinking, man, how are we going to do an interview with Tammy and not have spoilers if she's Rumpel's mother? Because that's a pretty significant role. But no, she's not Rumpel's mother. So that kind of makes it easier. I
It's
think.
so confusing.
Yeah.
Like, would they cast the same person to play Rumpel's mother in present time? Because has she aged? Did fairies age? Blue Fairy doesn't seem to age.
No, I
But then
don't
she's
think.
younger than Robert Carlyle. So it's really funny if they take a family picture with Robbie, who played Pan, the
Yeah.
little Pan. Robbie, is his name Robbie something?
Robbie K. That doesn't
Robbie
sound
K.
right somehow.
Someone just needs to like edit together like really like family portrait looking photo edits of like the family pictures.
Their Thanksgiving meal. Yeah.
Well, someone joked that like Jared Gilmore, Robbie K or whatever his name is, and then the guy who played Balefire, and then I can't remember who the fourth was, could all go out for dinner and be like, "Oh, we're in a TV show, and I play the grandpa, and he plays the grandson, and
Yeah.
I play the father."
And then you cut to that scene from You've Got Mail. We are an American family.
Oh, it is Robbie K. You were correct.
Yeah.
Someone in the chat just.
It just didn't feel right to say it, but well, everyone, we're going to head out. Thank you very much for joining us and sticking around through all of the horrible failures on my part, mixing up names. Thank you, Matthew Paul, for correcting. Matthew is one of our walking Once Upon a Time dictionaries. So thank you very much, Matthew. That would have been embarrassing, and the agent having to say, no, that's actually not what happened. That's not who she played. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll be back. I will be recording the interview, looks like this Tuesday at sometime between 1 and 2:30 p.m. Looks like it will be only me recording it, unless that time doesn't work out. But I'll get some questions lined up. I've got I think some good ones that'll be fun. And it'll be maybe like a 10, 15-minute interview. Chartreuse fairy. Nice.
Yeah, I have some questions, so I'll put them in workflowy.
Okay, cool.
Maybe just one, but
yeah, I'll stick in a note, a new item in there. All right.
okay.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night, and bye.
Good night, everyone.